I hope you all had a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. It seems the division leaders are gobbling up the competition this year. Sorry. As NFL Week 12 brought a little more clarity to the playoff picture. This is first time in memory that 4 division leaders in a conference AFC have a minimum of 3 game leads. The NFC is not much closer with only one division within a game, NFC North, and 2 others that are wide spreads in the NFC West, 2.5 game lead for SF and NFC South for game lead for Atlanta. These wide division gaps will lead to division titles being clinched earlier than normal, but will also lead to a murky wild card playoff picture. Also, due to the records of the wild card contenders being worse than normal, we are seeing more teams alive for the playoff race this year. So far, we have only eliminated the 1-10 Kansas City Chiefs from playoff contention, leaving 31 teams in the playoff hunt. That's the largest number of teams in playoff contention with 5 games to play since the 2007 season. So we look ahead to Week 13 and how teams can lock up playoff positions. We're heavy on division clinching scenarios for this time of year due to the AFC leader positioning, but we have some playoff berth clinching situations to examine as well. Let's start in the AFC. New England can clinch the AFC East division title with a win at Miami. That's all they need, as the win would give the Patriots a 5-0 division record and would give them at least a split in their season series against the Dolphins. No team in the division could beat New England at 9-7, as they would either have a head-to-head advantage. New England swept Buffalo and the NY Jets, or would beat Miami on division record. Baltimore can clinch the AFC North division title with a win against Pittsburgh plus Cincinnati loss. The win gets Baltimore to 10-6 at worst and Pittsburgh to 10-6 at best, and the Ravens would own a 5-0 division record and a season sweep of the Steelers. If you combine that with the Cincinnati loss this week, which would get the Bengals to 10-6 at best, the Ravens would have at least a split with Cincinnati and would beat them on division record 5-1 to 3-3. Also, there can't be a 3-way tie with Baltimore, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati at 10-6 in this scenario, because Pittsburgh and Cincinnati play each other on Week 16. If the Ravens don't clinch a division title this week, Baltimore can clinch a playoff berth with either a win or a tie plus Cincinnati loss plus Miami loss or tie. The win gets the Ravens in the playoffs, as they would get to 10-6 at worst, and only 8 teams can get there, so we need to eliminate 2 teams to clinch a playoff berth. The win puts Pittsburgh behind Baltimore for good, as we saw above with the season sweep. Miami is another team that can get to 10-6, but they can't beat Baltimore in any tiebreaker, as they don't play head-to-head, and Baltimore would have a 9-3 conference record while Miami is 7-5 at best. We must also consider if Miami can win the East and the possibility of New England beating Baltimore in a wild card tiebreaker. Well, the Ravens beat the Patriots in Week 3, so that hurts those chances, and if we consider a 3-way tie between New England, Baltimore and Indianapolis, the Patriots would need to win that tiebreaker to negate the loss to the Ravens. However, if we get each team to 9-3 in the conference in an effort to have New England win a tiebreaker on strength of victory, that gets Indianapolis to 11-5 overall, which kills the 3-team tie. If Andy is at 10-6, that would get them to 8-4 at best in conference record, thus leaving Baltimore versus New England, and we know Baltimore wins that head-to-head. On the tie scenario, leaving Baltimore at 9-6-1 at worst, we need a Cincinnati loss, as the Baltimore tie keeps Pittsburgh alive to beat the Ravens. We also need a Miami loss or tie, as the loss would keep the Dolphins from catching Baltimore, or a tie would create a potential tiebreaker that Miami cannot win over Baltimore, same reasons as above at 10-6. Denver can clinch the AFC West division title with either a win or a tie plus San Diego loss or tie or San Diego loss. Denver can't lose the 2-team tie with San Diego due to their head-to-head sweep of the Chargers. If Denver ties with Oakland at 8-8, Denver would win the tiebreaker on common games record 7-5 to 6-6. Also, Oakland getting to 8-8 would give San Diego its 8th loss. In the case of a 3-way tie at 8-8, Denver would win the tiebreaker on head-to-head record, as the Broncos would be 3-1 versus 2-2 for Oakland and 1-3 for San Diego. The Texans cannot clinch a division title this week, but Houston can clinch a playoff berth with either win or tie or Miami loss or tie plus Cincinnati loss or tie or Miami loss or tie plus Pittsburgh loss or tie or Cincinnati loss plus Pittsburgh loss. Houston can't clinch the division since Indianapolis could still sweep the Texans with wins in Week 15 and 17. The Texans win or tie gets them into the top 7 in the AFC, and with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh playing each other in Week 16 gets Houston a playoff spot. If Houston does not win, they basically need to get rid of 2 of these 3 teams, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati and Miami. Since Baltimore would win any head-to-head tie with either Pittsburgh, Cincy or Miami, a Miami loss or tie gets rid of Miami combined with either a Steelers or Bengals loss creates a tie with Baltimore for one of those teams or tie creates a situation where tying team needs to win out including win in the Pittsburgh game gets the Ravens in the playoffs. If Miami wins, we would need both Cincinnati and Pittsburgh to lose to get the Ravens in as Miami could beat them to a wild card, and if either Cincinnati or Pittsburgh wins or ties, they could win out to beat the Ravens to a wild card. How about some NFC fun? Atlanta can clinch the NFC South Division title with either a win plus Tampa Bay loss or tie or a tie plus Tampa Bay loss. The Atlanta win over New Orleans would get them to 11-5 at worst, but since Tampa Bay could still catch the Falcons at 11-5 and beat them in the tiebreaker on division record 4-2 to 3-3, Atlanta would need a Buccaneer loss or tie to clinch. In the case of an Atlanta tie, they would simply need Tampa Bay to lose so that the Bucs couldn't catch them in overall record. If Atlanta wins or ties but Tampa Bay wins, the Falcons can clinch a playoff berth with either a win plus Seattle loss or a tie plus Seattle loss plus Minnesota loss. If Atlanta wins to get to 11-5 at worst and we assume Tampa Bay goes on to win the division, we basically need to get rid of 2 of Green Bay, Minnesota and Seattle to lock up a playoff spot for the Falcons. Since Atlanta would only be 7-5 in the conference in this scenario, they could still lose to Minnesota if the Vikings win out. However, the Vikings winning out means 2 losses for Green Bay, which would mean at least one of those teams couldn't catch Atlanta at 11-5. So if we get a Seattle loss or tie, the Seahawks can beat the Falcons at 11-5 on conference record. That combined with the Minnesota-Green Bay scenario gets the Falcons in the playoffs. If Atlanta ties, they still need to get rid of 2 of those same 3 teams and would need a Seattle loss to avoid a tie, and a Minnesota loss because the Vikings could tie Green Bay and then win out. Which would leave Atlanta, Minnesota and Green Bay at May 1st 10. And Atlanta would lose out in all cases based on conference record. Those are the clinching scenarios for this week. Fire away with any questions you may have. I'll take a look at other teams vying for playoff spots later in the week. Playoff picture scenarios, Week 13, AFC, Houston Texans. Houston can clinch a playoff berth with 1 win or tie or 2 missing in action loss or tie plus Pitt loss or tie or 3 missing in action loss or tie plus CIN loss or tie or 4 Pitt loss plus CIN loss. Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore can clinch the AFC North Division with 1 BAL win plus CIN loss. Baltimore can clinch a playoff berth with 1 BAL win or 2 BAL tie plus CIN loss plus missing in action loss or tie. New England Patriots. New England can clinch the AFC East Division with 1 Northeast win. Denver Broncos. Denver can clinch the AFC West Division with 1 Den win or 2 Den tie plus SD loss or tie or 3 SD loss. NFC. Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta can clinch the NFC South Division with 1 ATL win plus TB loss or tie or 2 ATL tie plus TB loss. Atlanta can clinch a playoff berth with 1 ATL win plus C loss or tie or 2 ATL tie plus C loss plus minimum loss.